The sound of violins echoed through the opera house in the heart of Paris, where rows of red velvet seats stretched like waves of luxury. Hundreds of diamond-adorned eyes were fixed on the stage, awaiting the debut performance of France's most prestigious symphony orchestra. Among them, seated in the very front row, was the head of a renowned European real estate conglomerate, Henri Delacroix. A man in his 40s, famous for his billions of euros, yet tonight his face flushed not from champagne, but from a shame he could not conceal. On his lap, his 7-month-old daughter Camille screamed in piercing bursts, her cries drowning out the opening overture. For 3 hours, Henri had tried everything, taking the baby out to the foyer, hastily hiring a female attendant to hold her, playing lullabies on his phone, even pressing against her chest the silk scarf his late wife had left behind. Nothing worked. People nearby began to whisper. Some frowned. Others shook their heads. A noblewoman murmured to her friend, "Children don't belong here. How thoughtless." Irritated glares, derisive whispers, every furrowed brow cut like a knife into the heart of a man long accustomed to deference. For the first time in his life, Henri, the man who had signed contracts worth tens of billions of euros, felt utterly powerless. He couldn't soothe his own daughter. Then suddenly, from the second-tier seats, a skinny teenager in a faded shirt hurried down the steps. In stark contrast to the opulent attire all around, he looked out of place amid the high society spectacle. Slung over his shoulder was an old wooden case with chipped edges tied with a hemp cord. When he reached Henri, the boy bowed politely, his voice soft yet clear. "Sir, may I try? I think I can help her sleep." The entire hall froze. A stranger descending from the cheapest seats, daring to offer help to a distinguished billionaire in the midst of aristocracy, Henri looked at him with tired, desperate eyes. He knew that perhaps only a miracle could save him from this humiliation. The teenager stood there, still clutching the wooden case as if it were a treasure. Every gaze in the hall converged on him, curious, disdainful, suspicious. A few guests scoffed. "A country boy teaching us how to soothe a baby. Ridiculous. This is a concert, not a nursery." But Henri, his eyes reddened from exhaustion, saw not brazenness in the boy's gaze, but an astonishing calm. He nodded and gently placed Camille into the boy's arms. And a miracle happened. At the mere touch of his hands, Camille's cries faltered, then faded into little hiccups. The boy carefully opened the wooden case and took out a worn flute, its headpiece tinted by time. He held Camille to his chest, his fingers gliding lightly over the flute, and a rustic melody rose, neither ornate nor perfect, but as gentle as a country breeze. The vast hall seemed to soften. The crying ceased. Little Camille opened her eyes, looked at the unfamiliar face, and then slowly closed them, sleeping peacefully in his arms. A hush fell over the entire orchestra. No one could believe it. An old flute and a poor teenager had accomplished what countless nannies, nurses, and even the father himself could not. Henri stared at him, stunned. He muttered, "How did you do that?" The boy smiled, a strange light in his eyes amid the splendor. "My little sister used to cry through the nights. My mother worked late, and doctors were too expensive. I learned to use music to lull her to sleep. It took me a whole year to find this tune." Under the dazzling lights, Henri noticed the boy's hands calloused, still bearing fresh scratches, like the hands of construction workers on a job site. Yet those fingers had just woven a tender melody that made his heart tremble. Then, as the boy clutched the flute again, Henri caught sight of small labels on the outside of the wooden case: Olympiade Mathématique, Marseille, Lyon, Bordeaux. math competition awards from all over. A poor boy who played the flute to soothe babies, and at the same time a mathematical prodigy. Henri realized he had witnessed not merely a miracle, but the emergence of an extraordinary person. His name was Julien Moreau, 16 years old, from a poor neighborhood on the outskirts of Marseille, where shabby buildings crowded together, paint peeled from the walls, and police sirens wailed every night. His mother worked night shifts at a fish processing plant. His father had left when Julien was 8. He grew up with his little sister Leah, who had cried through many nights because of a gastrointestinal illness that drained the family. With no money for major hospitals, Julien found his own way. By day, he studied at an overcrowded public school. By night, he stayed in the city library, poring over worn books on medicine, mathematics, and music therapy. The wooden flute, the only thing his father had left, became his instrument for experimentation. Gradually, with stubborn persistence, he discovered a melody that soothed Leah and helped her sleep after bouts of pain. That was also when another of Julien's gifts emerged. His math teacher discovered he had finished the entire high school curriculum in just 6 months. At regional academic contests, Julien won repeatedly. Even without money for a decent calculator, he solved problems on pages crammed with formulas. He called mathematics the language of truth. Like music, it could soothe or break through circumstances. When news of the international mathematics competition in Paris reached them, the people of Julien's poor neighborhood did the unthinkable. The bakery owner contributed, the fishmonger saved, every spare coin factory workers donated overtime pay. They scraped together enough for a second-class train ticket and the simplest outfit for Julien. The night before he left, his mother hugged him tightly, her hands scented with sea salt, but her eyes full of hope. You carry more than your own dream. You carry all our faith. And so, under the glittering lights of an opulent theater, a poor teenager with an old flute and the goodwill of an entire community stood before a distinguished billionaire. 2 worlds that seemed destined never to meet now crossed in an unforgettable moment. Henri sat motionless on the red velvet seat, hands trembling as he took Camille back from Julien's arms. The child slept soundly, breathing evenly, her tiny hand still clutching the boy's shirt hem, as if reluctant to let go. The hall buzzed with murmurs, but no longer of reproach, now of astonishment and admiration. Henri spoke softly, his voice still hoarse with emotion. Julien, where did you learn all this? How can a 16-year-old know so much? Julien smiled faintly, a mix of confidence and humility. I have nothing but time and necessity, sir. When Leah cried through the night, I had to learn to understand her. Music helped me listen, and mathematics helped me find the rules behind everything. Henri looked closely at the wooden case beside Julien. It was plastered with stickers from math competitions, each one a trace of the road, a traveler's map. In those clear eyes, he saw something years in business had never shown him: intellect paired with compassion. A brief silence passed. Henri lowered his voice as if afraid to wake Camille. Tomorrow I have major negotiations. I'll bring my child along and have no idea how to manage. You've just taught me a lesson, Julien. Not a business lesson, but how to put your heart into the smallest things. Julien hesitated, about to slip back to the cheap seats, but Henri held him back. Sit with me. Tell me, how did a boy from Marseille end up at such a lavish concert? Julien paused, then slowly shared about the poor neighborhood, his mother and sister, the community that pooled their coins to send him to Paris for the international math competition. Henri listened, a new kind of empathy lighting his eyes. In those few brief minutes, the gulf between billions of euros and a small suburban shack narrowed. No longer a billionaire and a poor boy, but an exhausted father seeking help and a teenager weighed down by dreams and responsibility. Henri realized this very moment had begun a bond that would change both their destinies. That night after the concert, Henri brought Julien and little Camille back to the Ritz where he was staying. The corridors glowed with crystal lights, the carpets were thick underfoot, yet Henri's mind churned in unusual turmoil. The man who had signed multi-billion euro deals and turned the tide in international negotiations now sat in a luxurious suite able only to watch his daughter sleep soundly, in the arms of a poor teenager. When Camille stirred, Henri hastily lifted her from Julien. Strangely, the moment she was separated, she began to fuss again. Flustered, Henri had to hand her back. Once more the crying ceased. A mixture of gratitude and hurt rose in him. He, a powerful man, was no match for a 16-year-old boy. After a long silence, Henri spoke in a low voice. "Julien, tomorrow I have negotiations from morning till night. I can't bring Camille into the meeting room, but I can't leave her alone either. Would you be willing to stay with her just for a few days?" Julien looked up, eyes bright yet hesitant. 500 euros a day, the sum Henri offered, was many times his mother's monthly income. With that money, his family could pay debts, fix the leaky roof, perhaps take Leia to a specialist. But Paris also held something else of utmost importance, the international mathematics competition, the dream in which the entire community had placed its faith. Sir Julien replied, his voice trembling. "I don't want to break my promise to my teachers and to those who sent me here, but I also can't turn my back on a child who needs me." Henri looked at him, recognizing the honesty. For a moment he saw himself at 20 choosing between career and family duty. He sighed, then smiled. "Then we'll arrange it. When I'm in meetings, you watch over her. When you compete, I'll take Camille for a walk. I don't want to steal your chance, Julien. I just want to find a way together." Those simple, sincere words opened an unprecedented agreement, a billionaire and a poor teenager sharing responsibilities both to salvage a major deal and to protect a dream. The next morning, Paris sunlight streamed through the Ritz's windows, glinting off Henri's immaculate suit. He handed a drowsy Camille to Julien, then hurried into meetings with European investors. As the door closed, Julien settled by the window and opened his math books, while Camille occasionally wriggled, soothed by the soft flute melody he hummed. Then the international mathematics competition officially began at the Paris Academy of Sciences. The room was solemn with high frescoed ceilings. Contestants wore crisp uniforms and carried modern calculators. Julien entered in an old shirt with a stubby pencil and a frayed backpack. Curious, even mocking glances slid over him. He paid no mind. When the papers opened, his eyes lit up. A complex number theory problem, he saw the pattern immediately. A thorny combinatorics problem, he used his own method based on the rhythmic rules he had once applied to soothe his sister. Each solution flowed naturally, blending textbook knowledge with hard-won experience from a poor neighborhood. In the team round, Julien was grouped with students from Japan, Germany, and Brazil. At first, they regarded him cautiously, but when he proposed modeling Marseille's traffic flows to tackle a city optimization problem, the team was stunned. "This idea is more practical than any model we've seen," one teammate exclaimed. From being underestimated, Julien became the discussion leader, helping the group place among the top teams. After the exam back at the hotel, Julien found Henri holding Camille as she played with wooden blocks. Henri's eyes were heavy with fatigue but gleamed with faith. "How did it go?" Julien smiled, not daring to be certain, but the confidence in his eyes told Henri enough. In the following days, the schedule was relentless. Mornings, Julien competed afternoons. He watched Camille evenings. Henri recounted deal-making tales, as if passing on life's lessons. Gradually, the relationship among the three, a billionaire, a teenager, and a child, became a strange yet warm little family. Julien felt that he wasn't competing just to win a prize, but to prove to Henri, to Camille, and to himself that true worth lies not in where you start, but in how you use mind and heart to rise above. On the final day of the International Mathematics Competition, the hall of the Paris Academy of Sciences was packed. The air was dense with tension. This was the open solution presentation round where each contestant had to stand before a panel of distinguished professors and hundreds of spectators to present their ideas. Julien walked to the lectern, his old shoes scraping softly against the wood floor. The big screen displayed the topic, developing a mathematical model to predict and control epidemics in urban areas. Many contestants sighed anxious. Julien's heart pounded, but his eyes shone. He remembered the poor quarters of Marseille, the times neighbors fell ill with malaria, tuberculosis, and the haunting image of Leah feverish on a narrow bed. He began. Not with a wavering voice, but with certainty steeped in lived experience. He drew community network diagrams, explained each formula, described how to compute transmission probabilities based on movements within a city, then proposed a low-cost prevention model. Every example was grounded in everyday life, overcrowded buses, thronging fish markets, cramped housing blocks. The judges accustomed to dry theory fell silent. A white-haired professor leaned back and whispered, "This boy has turned mathematics into life's very breath." When Julien ended with mathematics is not only to solve problems but to save lives. The hall erupted in applause. In the audience, Henri leapt to his feet, one arm holding Camille as she clapped along, his eyes brimming. At the awards announcement, Julien's heart nearly stopped. First prize of this year's International Mathematics Competition representing France, Julien Moreau. The sound swelled and burst. He stepped up to receive the trophy, his calloused hands trembling around the gleaming glass. In the crowd, Henri held his head high, not the proud billionaire, but a proud father. Camille chirped, as if she understood that the boy who had once lulled her to sleep had just made history. Julien suddenly felt no longer alone. This success belonged not only to him, but to his mother, his sister, the Marseille community that had pooled their coins, and to the wealthy man who had recognized his worth. Victory brought more than a title. It brought recognition from the very world that had once doubted and looked down on him. 3 days after the award ceremony in the rooftop conference room of the Ritz, the glow of sunset poured through the glass. Henri sat across from Julien with Camille sleeping in a cradle beside them. On the table, business contracts lay unsigned, while something more important was being discussed, a promise for the future. Henri spoke slowly, his voice no longer the cold tone of a conglomerate chairman. Julien Ferreth once thought my legacy was buildings and projects across Europe. But seeing you on that stage, I realized true legacy is people. You're not just good at math. You have compassion and grit, exactly what society needs. Julien was silent, feeling as if his heart tightened and opened at once. Henri continued, "I want to establish a scholarship fund named the Leah and Camille Foundation. It will help children from poor neighborhoods gain access to education like you did. And I want you after your studies to come back to lead it, to pass the opportunity on." Julien looked down at his calloused hands. He thought of his mother still working night shifts, his little sister awaiting news, and the neighbors who had scraped together coins to send him to Paris. In that moment, he understood his victory was not only to step into the world, but to bring that world back to his community. He nodded, eyes shining. "I agree, sir. But not as a favor, as a responsibility. If mathematics is the language of truth, then I want to use it to write a new truth, that one's origins do not determine one's future." Henri stood and extended his hand. That handshake between a billionaire and a poor teenager was no longer pity or a mere contract, but the beginning of a shared legacy. Years later, when people spoke of Julien Moreau, it was not only as a young mathematician with international honors, but as the man who built hundreds of classrooms and granted thousands of scholarships to poor children across France. And Henri was no longer remembered merely as a real estate tycoon, but as the one who dared to believe in a poor boy amid a glittering hall. And it all began with a baby's cry in a Paris opera house, and with the decision to help when someone needed it most.